So without further ado, though, I'd like to turn over the front of the room to my colleagues, Joan Easler and Erik Johnson, and they're going to be giving us a very good workout, I think, before we have our break in terms of how important diversity is at the University of Toledo and in our country and our world, but more specifically, how will you handle inclusivity in classrooms? Some of us might be surprised at microbiases that you might have, and so stay tuned for a very good session.
Okay, thank you
so much for coming, Joan.
Sure. Now, do we have a clicker for the...
I'm sorry, I don't. Can I have my grad student advance for you? Would that
Okay.
be helpful? Yeah, I'll get him down here.
Okay. Oh, Erik said he could just do it. Erik, you'll do it? Okay, all right.
And then for this, I left it on, I think, and so you can just put it up here, if you don't mind me getting close. I'm asking permission before touching my colleague. This is one of those things that you will learn that's important to do. How is that? See,
Okay, is it on? Can you hear me? Can you hear me now? That sounds familiar. Can you hear me now? All right. It doesn't sound different to me, so I can't tell. All right, well, good morning. Welcome to our presentation on creating the inclusive classroom and civility. Again, let me say my name. I'm Joan Easler. I am a diversity resource specialist in the Office of Equity, Diversity, and Community Engagement, and my colleague.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Erik Johnson. I'm the manager of the Minority Business Development Center that's located on Scott Park campus.
Okay. You can go to the next one. All right, so the goal of our office is to create a welcoming environment to all populations here on campus. It's actually not to just create a welcoming environment, but to create a sustained culture. And you'll see the difference in that in a few minutes. Okay. I think I have to do it again. All right. So now let me just tell you a little bit about our office. We are comprised of several different centers and activities. The Minority Business Development Center, which Mr. Erik Johnson here is the manager of that center. The Catherine Eberly Center for Women, which is located in Tucker Hall on main campus. We provide these diversity trainings to new employees as well as different populations on campus. We are actually, there's a policy that, excuse me, every employee must go through this training within 2 years. Culture ambassadors, that is a group of students, faculty, staff that come together to help with creating this welcoming environment, as well as, I don't know if you're familiar with the climate survey that is conducted every 2 years on campus. They're the ones who will actually go through that survey and identify the issues that have been identified through that survey. And the President's Lecture Series on diversity, that is a part of the President's Office, financed by the President's Office. It's a group of people who come together to identify different speakers that would enrich our campus in the area of diversity. Okay. Again, the climate survey, develop and manage the diversity plan process. Each department and college on the campus has to create a diversity plan. Has anyone ever heard of a diversity plan? Okay. You know, diversity is not just something that happens. It's a strategy. You have to plan for it. You have to usually understand the concepts behind diversity. It's something that will help each department identify ways to to be more inclusive to all different populations, which we'll discuss, which different demographics and groups of people that the university specifically identifies as those that they want to reach out to. Culture Building Institute. We also provide training to students and staff on deeper understanding of the dimensions of diversity. What I'm going to do today is just kind of go through a really quick awareness, some activities, and some more, like I said, understandings. And then again, there are the different Culture Building Institute courses that you would be able to take for free. And then we also have a master's certificate in diversity, which it's an online year-long course that would get you a master's certificate. And again, it goes even deeper into diversity. There's a lot of research about diversity, of the benefits, the barriers, what it takes to actually embrace it. All right, so welcoming. These are the dimensions of diversity that the University of Toledo advocates for. We've got age, race, color, ethnicity, gender, religion, ability, ancestry, national origin. In addition, military, veteran status, genetic information, familial status, political affiliation, participation in a protected activity, socioeconomic status, sexual orientation, gender identity. Now, this is all really good. This is a good thing to do, but we also do it because it's the law. Title VII of the Civil Rights Act of 1964 prohibits discrimination in employment. Title IX, Education Amendment, prohibits discrimination based on sex for any activity here at the campus. And Title II, Americans with Disability Act. Okay, back up 1 second. Just the one. Okay, yeah, just hit it once. Oh, well, okay, go ahead. I'm sorry. You weren't supposed to see that part. But we're going to do a little exploring activity. You want to take this one, Erik? All right.
So as mentioned earlier, we have some interactive activities that we'd like to engage in. And what I'm going to ask you to do is to kind of partner up in one or in two groups of two, if possible here. And what I want you to do is take a few minutes, maybe 2 to 3 minutes, to identify the differences that you have between each other. So let's take 2 to 3 minutes, pair up. We got to move. We ain't got that much time.
Active learning.
Active learning. Active learning. Share with us what you came up with. Now, when I have this happen, I'll have to start calling on people. And there we go. There we go. There we go. Thank you. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, so the three of us did it. And so we came up with different things, but we realized that we came from different countries that set us apart. Gender was also an issue, nationality, not an issue, sorry, but something that we realized, and also race as well.
Good. So they said that one of the things that differentiates them is that they came from different countries, that they have different genders, and they have different races. Okay. Anyone else want to share with us? that you came up with. Yes? I'm sorry, say it a little bit.
Different religions.
Okay, so he's got different religions. Got another one?
We're all from different places. We were all born in different states, all different ages.
All came from different places, born in different states and different ages. Great, excellent, excellent. So, the second half of this exercise, there's two parts to it. Now I want you to come back together, take another 3 minutes or so, and I want you to identify the things, more than one, that you have in common. First we looked at the things that was different. Now I want you to look at the things that you have in common. So if we could take 2 to 3 minutes to work on more than one thing that you have in common, and then we'll revisit this exercise. Okay.
All right.
Everyone's still smiling. Let's get a fun exercise. All right. So, who wants to share with us the things that we have in common?
Yeah, we two are of the same age.
Same
Age.
same age,
We are from the same country.
same country.
We are our football. We both like football.
Everybody likes football, soccer.
And both of our favorite sports star is Cristiano Ronaldo.
And they all have the same sports star.
And we are both grad students.
And everyone is grad assistant. All right, great. Anyone else? Yeah, right here.
We are both white with German ancestry. We're both non-religious. We are both in the fields which require a lot of time.
We said both white with German ancestry, both grad assistants,
Both non-religious
both non-religious,
and both in fields that require math.
both in fields that require math. Okay, great, excellent. So, while we were performing this exercise, let me ask you, which one was more difficult? To identify the differences or to identify the commonalities? Commonalities? All those that think that the differences was more difficult, raise your hand. Okay, raise it high. Okay. All those that think commonalities were more difficult. Oh, interesting, interesting. Typically, it is easier to identify those things that are different. Because we all come from different ethnicities, different backgrounds, different experiences. And usually it kind of shows up when we interact. So identifying those things that are different is usually pretty easy. But it takes a little effort for us to identify the things that are common to us. The one thing that I can say that I have in common with all of you here is that we're in the same place at the same time. So that's one thing that we all have in common. And it's easy to start with commonality, because when we can identify the things that we have in common, we can move beyond the barriers of diversity to come to some common ground. And when we can come to common ground, diversity is what influences initiative. And when we have initiative, we have innovation. And when we have innovation, we have a great, great experience. So when we look at diversity, and as we walk through life and our experience as students and professionals in our careers, we have to make sure that we take effort and make effort to find the things that's common between us, because that's what allows us to come together and experience the cultures and the great diversity that each person brings to a particular area or a particular place or a particular experience. So again, as we walk through and we talk and we go into our classrooms and we present and we teach, we need to keep in mind that there is something that we have in common. And even though we have some differences, we cannot let our differences stop us from coming together and accomplishing the task of, as we have here at the university, and we'll talk a little bit more about it, one of our missions, a piece of our mission is improving the human condition. Okay? So I hope that exercise was good. I hope that's a practice that you'll continue as you move forward. And we'll keep on going on with this presentation.
All right. All right, so now, one of your tasks will be to create the inclusive classroom. Civility, that's, you can go ahead. Okay. The noun, courtesy, politeness, a polite action or expression. Because we're all different, creating that inclusive classroom where everyone feels valued and appreciated and safe as well, it's going to take civility. Many people may have heard the phrase a civil discourse. When speaking of talking to others who disagree with us, it's so easy to get very passionate about what you feel, what you think, and your own ideas. However, when in the classroom, this is the time for exchanging ideas, and it's going to take a lot of, I call it suspending your own belief system to allow others who have different ideas to share theirs. You might think, oh, they are sorely mistaken about what they're saying. However, it is not the time to put them down or to let them know they're wrong. This is the time to give everyone a chance to open up, share their ideas, and to be included in the conversation. A lot of times we also tend to give examples of situations. For instance, it's so easy to use your own point of reference. But if you're paying attention to all the different dimensions of diversity that will be in your classroom, it would be good if you were to try to include them in some of your examples. One thing I was reading about how a lot of people back in the day, and I know that a lot of reruns still come on about the Friends TV show. That was like a top-rated TV show. Everybody knows about the Friends TV show. Everybody here know about the Friends? Yeah. Now, one thing about it is a survey was taken, and a lot of African Americans did not watch that show. So now if you start talking about that example about Friends, you may lose a lot of people in that example for the point that you're trying to make. So, for instance, at the same time period, a lot of people were watching the Martin TV show. So now, I don't know, maybe you never saw Martin, so you wouldn't be able to use that, but it would be something that you could research, look around, try to make a connection for all the different dimensions of diversity that are going to be in your classroom. All right. So with the UT mission, the mission of the University of Toledo to improve the human condition, to advance knowledge through excellence in learning, discovery, and engagement, and to serve as a diverse, student-centered, public, metropolitan research university. So again, being inclusive and civil in your classroom, it's a good idea, but it's also the mission of the University of Toledo. We take it even deeper with the core values: diversity, integrity, teamwork. Diversity, integrity, teamwork create an environment that values and fosters diversity, earns the trust and commitment of colleagues and the communities served. Provide a collaborative and supportive work environment based upon stewardship, advocacy that adheres to the highest ethical standard. So again, part of that civility is to be able to listen to what others have to say without passing judgment, give everyone a chance to share their ideas and participate and be included in the conversation. Okay.
So when we look at improving the human condition, we cannot improve the human condition without talking about culture. Okay? And when we look at defining culture, we define culture as a shared and sustaining approach to an environment. It deals with leadership practices to be able to anticipate and align and act. As a result of our culture and some of the things that we have experienced through our cultural experiences, it puts us kind of out in front in an anticipated position in a lot of cases. So because of culture, we already come into situations sometimes with predetermined positions and perspectives. But culture also provides for us a durable and robust environment, and its survival and power is not dependent on the presence and personality of any single individual. Okay? As a result, what we have is collectively the ability to create an environment of inclusiveness. Not when we have a culture, one individual's perspective on anything can impact a culture. The culture will sustain and will remain intact, even though you have individuals who may present experiences that may be contrary to the culture. So the alternative to culture is characterized by rhetoric. When we talk about individuals who are talking about things or acting ways that is contrary to the culture, it becomes basic rhetoric, as well as a lack of listening. I know we've all been there at some point in time in a situation where a group of us have been together, and most of the group is on the same page, but there's always one that may be walking upstream. And all of a sudden, over time, as they continue to talk or actions and things like that, we just kind of like, listen, enough's enough. So it produces a lack of listening, fears and centers that individuals bring to the culture. And all of a sudden, when people start to fear individuals as a result of rhetoric, which is contrary to the culture, there becomes an inherent fear associated with that particular individual or experience. Okay? So when we talk about culture, what we're really talking about is sustainability. The thing that will continue on beyond us. As we go into classrooms and we have our teaching experiences, that's for a time period. And as we move on and someone else comes in to replace us, the culture that you have set in place remains. It doesn't leave with you. And that is one of the defining things of a great organization. Especially as the Minority Business Development Manager, when I look at organizations, I look at processes. And when I look at processes, I want to look at the corporate culture. Because individuals are always changing. Now, granted, an individual may have a particular management style, but the culture in itself should not change. That is set by those who created the organization, indicated that culture, instilled that culture, and it remains on. So again, as we talked about dimensions of diversity, and diversity forms when we first started the presentation. Here are some more examples of dimensions of diversity: ethnic and racial diversity, gender diversity, gender orientation diversity, socioeconomic diversity, religious diversity, generational diversity, national origin diversity, and ability diversity. When we did the exercise and we looked at those things that we had in common as well as those things that differentiated us, a lot of these diversities popped up. So we have to make sure that we respect those diversities and understand that those diversities are good for organizations. It helps to improve the human condition. Now we look at some of the statistics that we have here for on campus for male and females. And again, some of these definitions are defined by the federal government, not by the University of Toledo. And we can see that we have a pretty diverse population in undergraduate and graduate student population. Okay? And again, when we look at faculty and the staff, again, these definitions was defined by the federal government, not by the University of Toledo. So again, we can see that pretty diverse across. I'll go back and say one thing about the student population. When we look at the student population, for example, where they have Hispanic/Latino, you can identify in one of these categories, but if you don't identify Hispanic or Latino, then you have to identify in another category. Okay? So, when we talk about diversity, why is diversity so important? Diversity is important because there's a huge benefit, an experience benefit to diversity. As we look to create a culture of inclusion, it benefits all of us to have diverse experience. How does it benefit us? It benefits us in the area of an expansion of learning through exposure. We learn from one another. There's some things that I can learn from you and you can learn from me based on my cultural experiences and vice versa. The appreciation and maintenance of one's own culture. You know, sometimes being exposed to other cultures can give you an appreciation of your culture. If you are always around individuals who come from the same experience, from the same culture, over time, that can become the norm. But what happens is when we interact with one another and we see the joys and the greatness of other cultures and some of the challenges and things that other cultures may go through, hey, you also have a great appreciation for your own culture. The ability to network with others. You know, if you do not embrace diversity, you're going to be very limited in your opportunity to network with others. And it's always about who you know as much as it's about what you know. Excuse me. Okay? And as you network with others, making sure that you are inclusive lends the opportunity to relate to others. Be as broad as you can. Be as inclusive as you can, because you never know what the next opportunity is or where the next opportunity comes from. Okay? The ability to effectively handle barriers. We're always going to experience barriers. That's just part of life. And usually barriers are a result of indignities. And as a result of our inclusiveness and our openness and our embracement of diversity, we're able to handle those barriers a little bit better. Okay? Knowing how to balance being part of groups and maintaining individuality is a key component. You don't want to lose your individuality, but yet you have to interact with groups. And when you get in group sessions and with groups, people bring different perspectives to the table. And you have to be able to appreciate that. Because if you don't, you may get kicked out the group. But ultimately, you want to be able to bring value to that group that you included in. And there's common ground that should be the goal. Common ground should always be the goal when we talk about inclusiveness and diversity and civility. We all need to understand that irregardless of where we come from, what our dimension of diversity is, we have at some moment in time a goal to accomplish. And the only way to really effectively and efficiently accomplish that goal is to make sure that we all on common ground. Okay? So let's look at another exploring activity here. So I'm going to go through a couple of statements here. And I want you to think about, have you ever said these statements? Or have you ever heard these statements? And if you've said them, who were you saying them about or to? I am afraid of what those people will do. I can't understand why those people won't learn English. They don't have the same work ethic. They don't know how to work a computer. They are too emotional to hold a leadership position. She thinks too much. They don't know any better. Get off the road when they get on. I don't understand why they always seem to seek jobs where other people have to make changes to suit just them. You ever heard that? Any of those phrases? By show of hands? Okay. I want to ask you to show your hands if you ever said those phrases. But I wish the camera was here and I could take a picture of your faces. Because it seems like those phrases cause a level of uncomfortableness. And those phrases are designed to cause a level of uncomfortableness. Because those are phrases that lead to barriers of inclusiveness. So the question becomes, what do we do when we hear these phrases, when we encounter these phrases, or even when we consider to say these phrases? Well, what we do is we just don't participate. We rise above those things. Or we ask questions to clarify what was meant so we can get a better understanding and able to respond. But when we respond, we have to remember that we need to hesitate and then educate. Because a lot of times, again, when uncomfortable situations arise, emotions do kick in. And sometimes our actions are followed by our emotions relatively quick. And we sometimes end up in situations where we're engaging in the barriers instead of breaking down the barriers. So one of the key things to remember is always to hesitate, then educate. Okay? Always bring it back to the mission and the core values. Again, we're talking about improving the human condition. And we're also talking about diversity, integrity. And if the things that we say and the actions that we do don't improve the human condition or don't create an inclusive, welcoming environment, then we are contributing to those barriers of inclusiveness. So there's two types of things that we have to kind of remember when we talk about barriers and some of those sayings that we heard. And that is that a lot of those sayings are initiated from personal and or social factors. When we talk about personal factors, we're talking about individual factors. Things that have been perpetuated over time in our particular areas of influence. We cannot help or have any control over who we were born to, in most cases what communities we live in, even our upbringing. But where we live, who we were born to, the things that we engaged in as we grow up had an impact on our personal being. And those are individual factors that's brought to the table. And then there's societal factors, things that are beyond our control. It's just part of society. And when we look at these two types of barriers, or where these barriers come from, it really revolves around, limited perceptions. We have not been exposed as much as we should have been or could be, so that we can overcome these personal and social barriers. When we talk about ethnocentrism, we're talking about one's own culture or ethnic group being the central or the normal in how we view perspectives or other cultures. And usually that comes with viewing other cultures as deficient or inferior. Okay? So again, remember, just because we come from different ethnic backgrounds, it does not mean that our particular ethnicity is any greater than any other ethnicity. And that's what really inclusion is all about, understanding. And really civility is having respect for other individuals and other perspectives. Okay? So when we talk about stereotypes is another term that you hear when we talk about barriers of inclusion, and that refers to an unverified or unsimplified generalization about an entire group of people. You cannot say, because you had an experience with one particular person from one particular group, that the whole group acts the same way. That's ignorant. And those statements or those actions based on that perception is what causes microaggressions, racial microaggressions. And racial microaggressions are brief and commonplace daily verbal behavior or environment indignities where intentional or unintentional that communicate hostile racial slights and insults towards people of color. And that's where, say for an example, you say something to the fact that, boy, you speak very good English. Assuming that an individual was not born in the United States and came through an American educational system. That's a microaggression. So we have to be careful about what we say, and understanding that if we have unverified or oversimplified generalizations about entire groups, it's going to lead to microaggressions. Okay? Prejudice, another terminology that we hear in identifying barriers. It refers to an irrational and inflexible opinion formed on the basis of limited and insufficient knowledge. Stereotypes typically lead to prejudice. Okay? When you don't have all the information and you make statements or behavioral actions towards other cultures, you are exhibiting prejudice. That's why it's so important when we talked about the benefits of inclusiveness, to get to know one another, to get to know each other, understand cultures and the value that comes from cultures, and the value that your particular culture brings to the table, so we're not a part of these barriers. And then there's power abuses, which we understand them from the perspective of isms. And there's a lot of them out there. But the isms is really defined as when power or one's ability to influence and control others is applied to a dimension of diversity. So we have ageism, racism, sexism, classism. And based on the dimensions of diversity and one's power and influence over individuals, you start to see the isms show up. And discrimination, which is commonly thrown around, and we hear that term a lot. But that refers to behavior and is defined as the unequal treatment of people on the basis of their group membership. So basically what we're doing when we discriminate against one another or each other, what we're doing is we're producing an unequal treatment based on one of the dimensions of diversity. Because you represent a group of people, a dimension of diversity, people are treating you unfairly, purely on the basis that you represent that dimension of diversity. That's what discrimination is all about. And we talked about some of the laws that address discrimination.
Okay. All right, so verbal and nonverbal communication. You know, you can go ahead and put the rest of it up there. Yeah, you know, it's been proven that 7% of what we say is actually connecting with your listener, but 93% of your actions or nonverbal messages are what really resonates within your the person that you're communicating with. So again, even though you might be watching the words that you say, you have to also watch how you actually interact or what your nonverbal actions are saying. So if you are actually put off by someone and you visibly show that, however, to someone else, you are much more engaging and cordial, that is going to show up, that is going to become a barrier in your classroom. That is something you have to just be on guard for and look out for. Next. All right, so listening. I mentioned the listening before, that everyone has the right to participate, even if they are saying something that we don't agree with. You still have to be respectful and allow everyone to have an opportunity to participate in the conversation. So, with listening, it's so hard to just keep listening to someone you don't agree with. But that's the challenge. That's the challenge. 3 approaches for effective listening. To be empathetic. Place yourself in the role of the speaker. Be deliberate, evaluating the message based on your own context. Active, provide feedback so the speaker gets the message. You provide feedback also to let them know that you understood, or this is what you understood them to say. So we're winding up with our diversity homepage located at that link. You're going to find the listing of all of our centers, offices, and programs. We have several pages, actually. You can gain a lot of information. There's a lot of resources available. If you have issues, you can even call our office to inquire. The different offices of accessibility are also, will have information there. If you have a situation in your classroom you're not sure how to respond to. The college diversity plans. Again, you're going to be with different colleges. Look at what your college diversity plan will show you what they're trying to do in the area of diversifying that college. The community resources and diversity testimonials. Resources and support. The UT Culture Building Institute. Like I said, this is just a bit of an awareness presentation. However, there's so much more to know about the area of diversity, and in particular, all the different dimensions of diversity require different strategies. So the UT Culture Building Institute provides several courses that some are day long, some are a few hours, but they're given throughout the year, and you would be eligible to attend those. There's over 20 workshops. Our Diversity Master Certificate is an actual online master certificate program in diversity. Now, Troubleshooting Life's Challenge, that is for anyone who's maybe having a few challenges in life and you need someone to talk to. Important information. Emergency for the police, non-emergency. We also mentioned that with the non-emergency, sometimes you have something as simple as you locked yourself out of your office, you locked your keys in your car, they will actually come and help you with that. Night watch, if you are concerned about safety, walking to your car at night, call Night Watch and they will come out and send an escort to walk with you. And then UT Rides, sometimes you need to go somewhere, it's just a taxi service. I even understand they will take you to the mall. So.
These numbers are located on the back of your UT badges as well.
Is that it? Okay, one last thing. Title IX, we have a UT Compliance Coordinator, Jovita Thomas-Williams, in the Office of Human Resources. If you find that there's something, you have a complaint regarding that or any of the other harassment or discrimination issues, you're to contact Ms. Thomas-Williams in Human Resources.
And there's one last thing. She said that was the last thing, but that wasn't the last thing. This is the last thing. And the last thing that we're going to ask you to do is that kind of two things. One, we need your commitment in making this university the great university that it is, and that we continue to improve on the human condition. And we need you to move. And MOVE is an acronym that is represented by motivation and desire. You have to have the motivation and desire to want to build a culture of inclusion. If you don't have the motivation and desire to be inclusive, it's not going to happen. Observe and be open. Recognize the differences among individuals and groups. Visualize relationships and collaboration. Finding common ground, goals, and aspirations. And finally, evaluate and assess. Look at the situations, evaluate it, assess the situation. Be proactive. Implement some of the things that you heard this morning in your walk, and make this university the greatest university in the country when it comes to diversity and inclusion. And if we can do that, the rest will follow, because we can all get along for that common goal. So thank you for your time and your energy, and we appreciate it. Hopefully you learned something.